He's the man of your dreams, one of the most iconic horror movie villains, and also has one of the most interesting film franchises. Let's rank the Nightmare on Elm Street films. How's it going, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. I'm your host, as always, Chris, and today, like I said, we are going to be ranking the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. If you are just now tuning in, I did reviews of the first three movies a little bit more in depth, and with today's video, I am going to go ahead and give quick reviews as I rank each of the movies from my least favorite to the best, in my opinion, of this franchise. So if you also want to go see the reviews, you can click those up here at the top. Those have been following, thank you again for the support. As always, I hope you enjoyed kind of like a quick deep dive into this franchise. It is one of my favorites. I grew up watching the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I love to see people's thoughts and opinions on my ranking down below. Try to be a little kind with it because I know it's going to probably piss some people off. And I'd love to see what other people's rankings are as well. Let's go ahead and rank these nightmare-fueled movies. And like I said, we're going to start with my least favorite all the way to my favorite, get some reasons of what the movie's about, why I like it, why it's in that spot. So other than that, let's go ahead and go in. Coming out first on the list of my least favorite nightmare movie, that's going to be Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Now, this movie, I'm not going to lie, I'm not a fan of. I've watched it only one other time, and I kind of forgot about it, so it felt like I was rediscovering this movie, and I wish that I could kind of forget it a little bit. This movie is not that great. It feels very offensive to the franchise, even though it's trying to pay respects to it in some aspects. It just feels like so on its hind legs. The design of Freddy in this movie, he looks old, he looks worn, he looks beat up. Robert Englund tries his best, we all love Robert Englund, but honestly, this movie felt like a little too much for him to carry on his own. You do get a young Breckenmeyer in this movie that's kind of entertaining to see, but most of the characters are pretty meh. They're all right. I did like them, but there was just not enough, story to really champion them. They just felt like fodder, which is unfortunate because this movie had a very interesting premise that Freddy is actually trying to leave Springdale, the town that he's in, on Elm Street, because he actually had, lo and behold, a lost child. He's trying to find his lost child, which throughout the whole movie, we're trying to figure out who that is. And the reason is because there are no more kids on Elm Street anymore where he is. He's killed them all, and everyone doesn't have kids anymore, and it kind of feels like a Twin Peaks episode. Child is actually the key for him to get out, to go to any sort of city or town that they are at, because as he quotes in the movie, every town has their own Elm Street. Really cool premise, some cool aspects, but it feels so disjointed and it feels like a collection of scenes, nothing actually tied together well. The ending in the final act is honestly pretty unforgiving. It's pretty lackluster. I don't care for this movie. It needed to be better. But yeah, that's why it's at the bottom of the list.
Now I'm playing with power!
Coming in at number 7, and I know I'm going to ruffle a lot of feathers with this, but I got to be honest, at number 7 is The Dream Child. The Dream Child, number 5 in this franchise. It just, it's a cool concept. Freddy is trying to rebirth himself, literally. We get to see a truly terrifying scene in the opening where we see Freddy's mom, or the incarnation of Freddy, based on what happened to her when she gets locked up accidentally in a jail cell full of lunatics. Pretty dark and disturbing, and insinuates a lot of things that are truly terrifying. You get to see the birth of Freddy as well, which is comical and also terrifying at the same point. Not only that, because you see nuns, which are always scary. But you get the return of Alice and Dan in this movie from the Dream Master, and I do enjoy seeing it. This movie plays off right at their graduation, so it's nice to see them. They have some new friends. However, they kind of find out that she's pregnant. They had premaritals. Unfortunately, couldn't be me. And they find out that Freddy is somehow coming back, and they can't figure out why. It has probably something to do with that child. It's a very gothic and creepy movie in some aspects. It also has some really great sequences, but I don't know. This movie, I find myself kind of tuning out after the first 10, 20 minutes, and then kind of, I don't know. This movie just doesn't hit with me like it hits so many other people. It just kind of meh for me. I find the child that Freddy talks in this movie very annoying. The kills are pretty interesting, but it just feels very hokey and goofy. This is where it kind of feels like the end is coming for this franchise, in terms of like the kill and dream sequences. Freddy is so unserious in some aspects, which we've grown to love in some capacity, but not at this length yet. And this is the kind of what happened. The same problem with Freddy's Dead in some aspects. Coming at number 6, this one really hurts. This is probably why you subscribe for this kind of crazy shit that comes out of my mouth. But number 6 is Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I know I've only seen this movie one other time, and I didn't even like it that much then, to be honest. I thought it was cool because it's meta. But then I realized, I just love Scream just so much. So, kind of forgives this movie, even though this came out before Scream. And I'm kind of glad it does exist because, I'm happy all these movies exist, but I'm so glad that Wes Craven came back for a third time in this franchise to stake claim and rightful ownership that Freddy is his creation. And mostly that Nancy is his creation. He loves the character of Nancy so much because it's a meta movie. Heather Langenkamp comes back and plays herself outside the script of Nightmare on Elm Street, as if it's in the real world. Really cool concept. And Wes reveals that he has regrets that he's kind of brought Freddy back because he didn't come back to the franchise to write more movies for Freddy to live in, that he's actually a dream demon coming to the real world. Kind of cool, but kind of meh. You get John Saxon that comes back. You get some really cool sequences with him and Heather in this movie returning as the dad and Nancy. You get a cool design for Freddy. You don't see too much of him, and you don't see a lot of him until much later in the movie. This movie really doesn't really pick up for me until like 45 minutes into this almost 2-hour movie. And the Scream movies, those are 2 hours, but those movies go by so fast. There's a lot of charisma. There's a lot going on and enjoyment, a lot of homage to horror movies. This movie, this is the foundation for the Scream movies, and I think Wes was trying to find his footing a little bit, but it just doesn't work really well for me. I know so many people love this movie, and they're probably right and I'm wrong, but at the same time, I can't. I don't know. I just get a little. It's just too slow for me at some points. And I find the kid not as annoying as the kid in Dream Child, Nancy's son in this movie, but a little annoying at times. Maybe this movie, this franchise just shows that, like, I shouldn't be having kids. Like, all the kids in this movie kind of annoy me. And also the kids cause problems for the characters in this movie. So maybe this is a cautionary tale franchise for me. I don't know. But some of those aspects, like being on the set and seeing the claw redesign and some, callbacks to the original movie, like the hospital scene paying homage to Tina's death is pretty cool in some aspects. I don't know. Movie just feels like, hey, remember you love this movie? Well, here's how it kind of looks again with the actors back. I don't know. I do think Wes Craven is great in this movie playing himself. I don't know if that's by design, that I think is the best character in this movie. I love his endearment to the character of Nancy. And it turns out that, that this kind of like critique, he's kind of like critiquing the weird fascination and love and admiration for the character Freddy Kruger, like we see in the TV studio. Like, that's a cool, like, little analysis, But then you see Robert Englund being so suave and cool that, I'm like, yeah, I love this guy. I love who he plays, too. Being away and, like, with sequels and critiquing that, because I know Wes didn't really care for the sequels. It just feels like a lot of, like, backhanded comments towards the franchise in some capacity, and some love. It's a weird mix. I'm being torn apart in two different directions, and I don't know how to feel. But yeah, at number 6 is the New Nightmare. Coming at number 5, making this list, I would never have thought this, but number 5 is the 2010 remake. I really kind of enjoyed it. It's not great. It's very much a meme movie. It's very entertaining. It's very dirty and grungy. It feels like the lesser version of Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, which are amazing movies and they're great, but this feels like of the same vein in some ways. Also, it gets overly hated like those movies, but this movie is not nearly as great as them. It's not even as good as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from the early 2000s, but it might be better than that Friday the 13th remake that's getting an Arrow release. So take that as you will. But this movie, I don't know. I think I enjoy it in the vacuum that it kind of exists on its own. It does borrow some story elements and beats from the first movie because it is a remake, but it plays the character of Freddy so differently, and like the lore that he had in the previous movies, completely out of the bag. Just a different type of Freddy Krueger, different world that we're in, and I kind of enjoy it in some aspects. I think it's really cool and unique take on it. Even though it's a remake, it feels like it's trying to not be a nightmare movie, but it unfortunately has that name stamped on it. which, you know, unfortunately hurts a lot of remakes in this era. So that's the good stuff. I also really enjoy the sinister aspects of Freddy in this movie. I'm not crazy about the design. I think that design is garbage. It is not good at all. Jackie Earle Haley does try to put his own twist and spin and interpretation of Freddy in this movie, and to some aspects he does. The kill sequences are really surprisingly gory and cool in this movie. I do applaud that. I was shocked to see that was going to be a thing. But the way he chuckles and makes his jokes and his puns, trying to be like the charismatic Freddy of old, he's just not it. He should have been hard as nails, super scary. Delivering these kind of pun things just kills the momentum that the movie had and some aspects, and it feels almost shoehorned in. Like, remember when Freddy said that? Now he's saying it again, but he's all evil and sinister. Like, it kind of ruins it. Like be original, be on your own. Like, if even though this isn't a good movie, you know, wear it proudly on your sleeve. You know, at least you did something different. But it feels feels like there's a lot of shoehorn scenes as well. They changed the character names except Nancy, played by Rooney Mara, which I don't understand. They keep her as Nancy, but change everyone else's names. That was a little confusing. It didn't make too much sense. The lighting in this movie is very early 2010s. I do like the nightmare aspects when they're in the dream world. I like that Freddy just pops out during their naps even, so at no point does it ever feel safe for them. This true sleep deprivation is real, although they all look emo and over 30, so I don't know if that just was the aesthetic back then and the style, or that was like a director's choice. But, you know, at least it's being, you know, a little different on its own. The lore of Freddy in this movie is insanely dark and disturbing. It doesn't feel like we're supposed to really like Freddy, which in the original movies, I'm sure that was his intention. But I mean, he is very charismatic. He has his jokes and his puns that are very gross and disturbing, like cutting his fingers off and, you know, putting his claw suggestively around. Jackie Earle Haley does that as well, but because his voice is so deep and dark, and we know about the backstory of him and what he did, is a little disturbing that you don't really want to spend too much time with him. So they do make him truly a monster. I do like in this movie that Freddy is not just tied to Elm Street or Springdale, but he's tied to the children that he was treacherous towards, which I do like. I like that concept a lot. But again, there's just some aspects in this movie where they just put some iconic scenes from the first movie? Yeah, they do that here for no reason at some points. And even some of the dialogue doesn't fit. It just feels like, it's like, I don't know. Maybe this is how some people feel like about Last Jedi or something like that. But I still really enjoy it, though. I wouldn't say this is a great movie, but I would probably rewatch this movie and still be entertained in some aspects. Coming in at number 4, I have... this movie shot up the list for me. Honestly, I just never really care too much for this movie, but it's definitely shot up after this rewatch, and that is number 4 at 4, The Dream Master. Coming off the Dream Warriors, we get Kristen back with Kincaid and Joey. They're the trio, but they also make new friends with in Shy Girl Alice and her brother Ricky. I really like the new added characters in the movie with the old trio from the previous movie. I think they all blend together so well. They have such great chemistry. I just really enjoy these characters. But Freddy does come back because a dog pisses on his grave. Kind of goofy and kind of like, oh, okay, I get it. But, you know, I'm down for it. I feel like in this movie, Freddy really is the Dream Master. Like, he is in control of the dream world. No one else but him in some aspects. Really creative lighting effects and great production in this movie. This is definitely, though, when you start to see the line of Freddy becoming a little bit more goofy and a little bit more punny. Not funny, but he's still a little sinister and dark at times. Him on the sandy beach with the sunglasses, like he's has a fin like Jaws. Really nice. I love seeing that. My heart does break a little bit with some of the surprise choices in this movie. But again, that's just the Nightmare franchise. You're going to love some of these characters and then they're going to kill some of them just because. So I do think The Dream Master, though, is a really, really easy watch in this franchise. And I do really enjoy it. I think, like I said, it's a little more creative. It's a little imaginative. It's also directed by Rennie Harland, who almost didn't get the job. Bob Shea thought he was going to ruin this franchise, but I think he actually elevated it even more. because of this movie. I think this is a strong movie in the franchise, and one you should definitely give a rewatch. Coming in at number 3, it was so close, but at number 3, I did have to put in The Dream Warriors, directed by Chuck Russell. I covered this movie recently on a new video, so if you do want to check out a full-length review, I have it up here. Go ahead and check that out. But in Dream Warriors has one of the best theme songs from Dokken. I also really enjoy the characters, like I said, and same thing for Dream Master. With this one, the original trio, we get to see them, plus more added characters. The return of Heather Langenkamp as Nancy in this movie as an adult. Freddy at his terrifying best. This is truly one of the best portrayals of Freddy, I would say. I just love how he's imagined with the kills. I like the quotes that he has in this movie. It's just great. This is just a great movie. I love the vibe as well. After this movie, none of the movies can match, I think, the vibe that this movie had. And that's why it's at the number 3 spot. At number 2, maybe a surprise to some, but at number 2, I have the original 1984 Nightmare on Elm Street. It's iconic. It's great. I love this movie. It's basically perfect. The portrayal of Freddy in this movie is so great. The perfect blend of comical and terrifying all in the same aspects. Also a little perverse in some ways too. I love that. I love this portrayal of Freddy. I think it blends all those things that we love about the character perfectly. I think the directing is great. Again, because it's Wes Craven, you know he loves his characters and they feel so endearing with Nancy and Glenn and Tina. And I love seeing them. The opening half of this movie is so great. It's perfect. But the latter half starts to slow down just a little bit in some points, but it's still great. Don't get me wrong. It has some of the best kills this franchise has to offer as well. An amazing, terrific score. This movie has it all. If you want to check out, again, full-length review, check it up here. And finally, at number 1 is Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. I love this movie. I'm not even going to hide. I love this movie so much. I love the character of Jesse. I love all the characters, his trio in this movie. I love the lore based on the first movie on this movie, and continuing it with this film. This movie feels like it's its own vacuum in its own space. It feels like it is the black sheep of this franchise. I truly do feel it. I don't think a lot of people really care about this movie. This movie's hardly referenced. In the end of Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, there's an homage during the end credits of all the movies in the franchise up until that point. Hardly any for Nightmare 2. It feels like they just want to sweep that movie under the rug. And honestly, this is one of their best. You get some great kills. You get a very terrifying Freddy. He's not funny really at all in this movie. The kills are a little silly at some points, but he himself is truly a menace. He's so evil in this movie. He's angry. I love seeing it. I love the score in this movie too. I'm not gonna lie. I love all the 80s actors in this as well. You get Clu Gallagher, Mark Patton. Come on, like this movie's great. And it also continues the tradition. We get 1 through 4 with great directors at the helm, with the first being Wes Craven. In this movie, you get Jack Shoulder directing, which is great. You get to see in the 3rd movie Chuck Russell, then 4th with Rennie Harlan. That's 4 straight great directors in this franchise that cements itself as like one of the best franchises of the 80s and in horror. I do love this movie so much, though, and I love the love it's getting. If you want to see me cover this movie more, again, there's a link up there and the link in the description to check out the full-length review. But yeah, it's got to be Nightmare 2 for me because I love when Freddy just goes, "You are all my children now." I just love it. It's just great. And that'll do it for us here. My full ranking of the Nightmare franchise here. What did you think? What are your thoughts? Go ahead and roast me down in the comments. I'd love to see other people's rankings down below as well. I don't know what franchise we're going to rank next. If you have a franchise you'd like for me to dive into and give a ranking, let me know down in the comments below. It doesn't even have to be exclusively horror, but I have really enjoyed this ride, and I hope you have as well. I hope to continue this some more. Let's get that support. If you like these reviews, rankings, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with others as well. And remember, don't forget, if you want to hang out with me live, I'll be on the Cobwebs show, Cobwebs channel. I'll put a link of that down below on Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, so don't forget to check that out. But that's going to be it for us here. We're going to lay this franchise to bed, tuck it in, give it a kiss on the forehead. My name is Chris here at Figure Out Films, and remember, if you are not watching the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, do you really care about cinema? Other than that, I'll see you next time.